When you're a kid, you don't understand the situation you're in anyways, right?
I actually started doing video work before I ever did music.
Instead of us becoming competitors, how about we become partners?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the What You're About podcast with me, Chad Abood. And this is where we meet inspiring leaders and entrepreneurs to learn how they've uncovered their natural gifts and brought it into their career. And I just care so deeply about this because I know that each of us has our natural collection of traits and skills, and they're a differentiator, and they also allow us to feel the most fulfilled in our careers. And today, we have an incredible double feature because we have two inspiring guys that are super creative and are using their powers together to allow attorneys and law firms build really engaging content and give their brand the credibility that it deserves. And so first, Brandon Lewis, the creative director, content creator. He has 15 years of songwriting experience, recording and production, specializing in writing and producing R&B, hip hop, and pop music. And he's created custom music for businesses to drive emotion, purpose. And he has over 1 million streams on Spotify. Incredible. And his partner, Jeremiah Iroff. J-Pro has an incredible story that we're going to get into today. Growing up in foster care, became homeless after high school, but he worked his way out of that situation, and through a variety of amazing entrepreneurial journeys, he became a commercial fisherman and then found his way to barber school, where he ended up becoming a top-end barber that fell in love with content creation to support that business. But he fell in love with content creation so much that that's what led him to partner with Brandon and co-found Loudr Media, where they create engaging content for attorneys. And guys, I'm just so glad to have you both here today. I know that you're going to inspire so many people that feel like their journey, maybe it prevents them from hitting that next step that they want to hit. And you guys have done so much online, in real life, through multiple industries, and I can't wait. I can't wait to share that story.
That was a great intro, Chad. Thanks. That was amazing.
You guys lived it. You lived it.
That was the best one yet. That was the best one yet.
That's good.
Appreciate
That's
it.
good.
We're happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Good. So, you know what? Maybe let's start with J-Pro, because J-Pro, we just met right before the recording. And so when I started learning more about your story, I was thinking, wow, I'm so curious to know, when you were growing up and going through some of this hardship, what were you feeling like inside? Were you thinking listen, I'm a resilient guy, I'm in a tough spot, but I'm going to fight through? Or as a kid, were you just trying to make it to the next thing and try to keep your footing? Did you recognize inside of you the strength that you had to get through some of those challenging situations?
Well, it depends if you're talking about when I was a kid or when I became homeless. It depends on which one you're talking about.
Take us back, man. Take us back.
Well, so I grew up in a foster care, and here's the reality. When you're a kid, you don't understand the situation you're in anyways, right? You're just getting jumped home to home, and I became a foster kid pretty much at 2 years old. So I got jumped. I think I went through maybe 11 foster homes, 3 group homes and whatnot. My mom eventually got me back when I was 13, 14 years old. I lived through high school with her. She ended up relapsing when I, around my senior year, got kicked out of our apartment, didn't have any family. So essentially ended up on the streets.
Wow.
We grew up poor anyways. So all our friends, they were barely struggling. We all we all pretty much raised ourselves, right?
Wow.
And then when I became homeless, yeah, it was a bummer. You know what I mean? I was only sad the first day. I was only sad the very first day. But then I was like, this is all right. I'll make it out. It's fine. We'll just move up from here. You know what I mean?
And is that because you had like so many data points of like knowing that, yeah, I've made it, like this is going to be a struggle, but I've made it through lots of struggles. Like, was that like talk track at all in your mind?
No. And I hear a lot of foster kids say this, and I don't agree with them. They're like, I survived foster care. I don't believe you survived foster care. You went through foster care. You had no choice. You didn't survive it, because ain't no foster kids being killed. You know what I mean? You just simply went through foster care. And even though it sucked, and there's some challenges that come with that, like, obviously you don't understand why you can't live with your mom. You don't understand why your mom's in prison. You don't understand why, you can only see her through the glass, or, when you finally do get visitations, it's 1 hour with somebody there and you guys can't leave that supervision. You don't understand those things as a kid. And so I don't think there's like because you don't really understand your situation enough to be like, I survived this or I made it through this. You simply just went through it. And
Right.
But as an adult, outside, like realizing no one's gonna come save you, your mom's not gonna come save you, nobody's gonna come save you, the system's not gonna come save you. So you have two choices, right? You either figure it out or feel sorrow for yourself, and feeling sorry for yourself gets nobody anywhere, right? No one's gonna come save you. You got to figure it out. You know what I mean? And once I came to that realization that I had nowhere to go, no one's gonna come save me, I was like, well, I'll save myself. It's fine. I'll make it through this. It's not that bad. You know what I mean?
Wow. That's incredible, man. I mean, I think, I can't relate to that exact situation, but like from a broader perspective, it always amazed me how this difference between how much we resist something that's very challenging that we're about to experience, yet how quickly humans adapt to that experience. And I mean, obviously the more extreme experience, the harder it is, but like there's so many times in your life or in your career where you're like, something's about to happen and you're like, there's no way I'll be able to do that, or that looks way too hard, or that's super scary. And almost every human that that's going through one of those experiences, like kind of to your point, like they find their way, they make it through. And it's amazing almost how little we remember that, because then we go into the next challenge and it's like, wow, how am I going to build this? How am I going to become a commercial fisherman? How am I going to become a barber? How am I, so I'll be curious to see, like, for you, how that stayed with you, all this experience of I can do it, because clearly you're an independent guy, and probably there was like creativity in a variety of forms back then, because you were like, well, I got to figure it out. So, you had to use whatever resources were available to you.
Yeah. So there was no resources. So this was like right during the Great Recession. This was in 2010, and there was like not everyone had a cell phone at the time. There was like no one, like, I'm here from San Diego. Now you go on every corner, they're giving out free smartphones. Well, back then it wasn't like that, right? So I think what I did was, like, I was trying to like think in my head, like, well, what do I gotta do? What do I gotta do? I could do this, I could do that. I knew I didn't want to ask for money, because I was too proud to ask for money, because I was like, what if that guy I asked for $1 in front of the Burger King, what if that's the guy I go ask for a job tomorrow, and then he remembers me and doesn't want to give me the job, right? So I didn't ask for money. But what I would do is I would go business to business and ask him, hey, can I clean your windows? Can I mop your floors? Can I wash your dishes? Can I get a job? Like, no one was giving me a job. Everyone was barely making it as it was. So, if everyone said no, eventually a pizza shop is like, hey, you come mop our floors, clean our tables, clean our windows, we'll give you a pizza. I was like, hey, I'll take it. Eventually that went from, oh, we'll give you pizza and $5. Then the Ethiopian coffee shop next door to it was like, hey, we'll give you $15 in a meal. You come do the same thing over here. I was like, cool, I'll take it. Then I went to another restaurant, and then and I got the opportunity at one point where I got access to a computer. And the first thing I did was I Googled how to not be homeless. And what popped up was a wiki how to not be homeless. You need a cell phone. You need a phone, because if you were to get a job, they need to be able to call you, be like, hey, you got the job, right? You need an address, because you need an address, and you need like an ID and all that stuff. Because you got to have an address when you fill out an application, right? So I was able to hustle up enough. I think I made like 80 something dollars, and I was able to get a Cricket wireless phone, like $30 a month. So I just started like working my way up there. Eventually, I landed in an MMA gym called Undisputed. It was in North Park at the time, and I went in there. Like, keep in mind, I'm homeless, so I was going like weeks without a shower. I would have to go to Burger King and bird bath it, and so I was like, I was an athlete in high school. I was like, okay, I want to work out. I need a place like that hopefully has lockers that I can like keep like my ID, like this the important stuff, like sort of like safe so no one steals it when I'm asleep. And so I want to work out, have a place to shower, and have a place I could possibly lock my important things, right? I go into this MMA gym. I was like, hey, how much is a membership? They're like, it's $130. $130 to a homeless guy is like $10,000, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like
Sure.
I could come up with like $15, you know what I mean?
Right.
I could make that work. But $130, you're talking about like equivalent to like, feels like $10,000 to me.
Sure.
I was like, so I shot my shot. I was like, hey, maybe we could work something out. Maybe I could clean the gym for you for a discount on that membership. It just happened to be at the right time. He's like, as a matter of fact, we're looking for a new cleaning guy. Can you start tomorrow? And I was like, absolutely. And I was like, by the way, how much do I have to pay with the discount? He's like, no, you work for us. You don't have to pay nothing. And from there, that was the start. I started showing up every single day. I was still sleeping on the streets. And eventually I showed up so much, the owner was like, hey, I have a van. You can sleep in the van at night, right?
Wow.
So eventually I worked my way from sleeping in the van to where he's like, hey, it's like really cold at night. You're catching the flu and stuff. You're like, you're sick. You can sleep inside the gym. It's a little bit safer. You know what I mean? So then I started sleeping inside the gym. And then one of my teammates, his dad was a captain of a commercial fishing boat. And he said, hey, you're going to go commercial fish with my dad. And I was like, commercial fish, man. Like, what? He's like, you ain't doing anything anyways. You're going. So then
That's cool, man.
I got a passport. I saved up some money. I also got like a job like washing dishes at the time. So I saved up what little money I had, bought my passport. Actually, I had to get a loan to get my passport from somebody. And it was like $400 or something, right? And then I went up to Astoria, Oregon, and I commercial fished for like 5 months. We caught 88 tons of tuna. They asked me if I wanted to go on a second season. I said, no, I'm done. Like, you're spending months on end in the middle of the ocean. It's not for me. It's not that fun. You know what I mean? So I came back.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah. So I came back with a little bit of money, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, well, maybe I'll buy a truck. I'll buy some lawn equipment. I'll become a landscaper. And then I had like so many people telling me, oh, you should do this with your money. You should do that with your money. You should do this with your money, to the point where I was like, I don't know what to do with my money anymore. And so that money sort of ran out. And I used what little bit of money I had left. I went to Texas and I started building houses. Because here was the most important thing I learned when I was homeless. I'm homeless because I have no skills. I have no payable skills. I'm not worth anything. I can't get hired because I have nothing to offer anyone. So I went on a skill acquisition journey. My mindset was, I need skills. I need skills. I need skills. So that's why I went to Texas. I worked for free for a year. Just so I could acquire some skills. Came back to San Diego and used some of that skill and some of that hustle and started a window cleaning business. And so I started making some money there. And then I went to barber school. Then I became a barber and I was doing pretty decent. I was doing really decent as a barber. And then it got to a point where I didn't like the lifestyle of being a barber, although I loved it. I loved talking shit with your friends, like hanging out. Your friends come see you, they pay you. It's like, what a great business, right? You get to talk shit and get paid for it. But I hated being behind a chair all day, every day. You know what I mean? It's just looking at everyone outside like, oh man, they're enjoying life. And I'm stuck here behind a chair. And then I started learning how to use the camera because I wanted to promote my business. Right. And then I would cut hair full time, and then I would apprentice under my friend who was a videographer for 20 years full time. So I would go cut hair, then spend the rest of my time with him, just shadowing him for like a couple of years. Yeah. I got good enough I was like, I could actually make some decent money using the camera. So then 2019, I went all in and I took the leap of faith, went all in, worked my way up, tried to find, I try to do this, like weddings. I try to do businesses. Like I was making all kinds of videos trying to see where I fit in. And then I realized I was really decent at helping businesses with their social media and growing on social media and being seen on their social media. And I was like, oh, well, maybe this is my niche, social media. And then that's sort of when
it's cool that you tested all of that, right? Like it's really difficult. I find it when we see people like you guys now have Loudr Media and you're helping all these people and you can see the success, but a lot of folks who are watching it might think that that was so obvious the entire time, right? But there's like a full journey behind it. Not only the personal journey, but also like if you don't test a variety of things that you think might work or you might be interested in, it's really difficult to like find the path. This is what I tell people a lot in like coaching is they're always thinking about like, well, what if I like this or what if I like that? And it's like, find the quickest, fastest, cheapest way to test if you like something. Like if you don't want to listen to a podcast about running a barbershop for 5 days in a row, that probably tells you you might not be as passionate about having a barbershop as you want. Yeah. But if you go and to a barbershop one day and you sit there all day watching how it works and the interactions and you realize how passionate you are about it, that's a great indication. And so I think your story is like, not only is it inspiring about like getting through all of those challenges, and I love the phrase like skill acquisition journey, but I also love the testing piece. You were like, and some of it is like, you're just trying to figure it out. But I think also it's like, it's a pretty good skill that like you've developed, or maybe you always had about, well, hold on, because you had to be efficient, right? So you're like, okay, well, I can try a little bit of this time, a little bit of this money doing this. What about this? If I clean this, what does that get me? If I try fishing, what does that get me? Is that worth it? And I think that testing is as important as anything else for people who are trying to like bring their skills into their business. And Brandon, I know for you, man, it was like, from the part that I do know, the music piece was always like very, very big for you, right? And so, take us back to like when you were getting ready to be the next sensation on the radio when you were a kid.
Well, interestingly enough, I actually started doing video work before I ever did music.
Oh, really?
So I've always been in this world, literally like since third grade. Like in third grade, I was making stop-start action videos with my parents' video camera with action figures, Star Wars action figures. So like, and I was editing the videos on the camera. I had a little editing feature where like, if you didn't like the shot, you watch it back, you hold it down, and it allows you to delete up until a certain point. You have to let go right when you want the cut. And that was how you edited it on the camera. So I could literally shoot, edit, and then I would have a finished piece on the tape. So yeah, I was doing that in the very, very beginning. And then music kind of like revealed itself at a certain point when I was in middle school. And then I started writing rhymes and stuff like that. But the music and the video, just because of the industry, it always goes hand in hand. For me, being a person who like always started things himself, like there was never anybody that came in my life and was like, hey, like you should be this and let me teach you how. It was just like, oh, I'm interested in that. I'm going to figure out how to do it myself. And I would do it. It didn't mean that I was learning the best habits or the best ways to do things by any means, but I was always taking it upon myself to create it. And so if I made a song, I needed a video for it. So that just kind of went hand in hand all the time. But fast forwarding.
Did you read? I'm curious. Did you ever read Will Smith's? Did you read Will Smith's biography that he came out with a couple of years ago?
I have it sitting on my shelf. I haven't read it yet.
The reason why I ask is because I thought he did an amazing job talking about that concept you just raised about like video and music, where he was saying like he realized that because obviously he had like massive careers in both spaces. And he realized that the way that he would become, as impactful as you want to is by combining those two things. When a lot of people weren't doing it. Like, so he had the soundtrack to the movies and not a lot of people could do it. And he saw that. And, you saw that already when you were just a little kid, man. Was it like pulling you forward, or was it just something where you're like, this is kind of a fun thing, but you didn't think it was going to be like a part of your future?
No, I wanted it to be part of my future. I was always thinking about it. It's always what I kind of wanted to do. And Will Smith was a huge inspiration for me and I was literally just thinking about this yesterday. about how Will Smith had the game on lock because he would put out a huge movie and then a hit song to go along with it. And that was like unheard of. He was like the only one doing that at the time. And that just maximized his brand and his talent and everything. But that's what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to make a movie and I wanted to do the soundtrack and I wanted to put out songs that coincided with it and stuff like that. But it was a creating things was always a driving factor for me. I just always wanted to build and create and build and create. I wanted to be able to say, check this out, I made it, you know, and like getting the response from people and people like being in awe and amazed of something that I made was like such a high for me. That was kind of what drove me to be able to like put a smile on somebody's face, like, oh, this is so cool. And they would share it with somebody. And like, I literally made a birthday video from my grandma when she turned 80 years ago. She's since passed. I just walked around the whole time with a video camera, filmed it for her 80th birthday. I was like 10 years old or something. I don't know, or like 12 years old. And like, I made copies of it on multiple VHS tapes and mailed them all off to everybody. And everybody's calling the house and this is so cool. Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted everyone to love what I created. That, I don't know if that's I don't know what that is. You know what I'm saying? But like,
well,
that's
maybe it's how you connect to the world, right? Like, it's like how you show your like connectivity and your care for other people is like through the creation of like some artistic or creative thing for them. But I'm curious though, because a lot of people, like I talk a lot about purpose and like the passion, because I feel like it's amazing fuel for your career. And you were just talking about your passion for this, like, but you also talked about like how impactful it is when you got the feedback, but that can cut both ways. Right. And that's when you hear a lot of folks say like, well, don't do your passion because it'll cut too hard. And how did you, like, as you were thinking about this and bring it into your life, and before it was even a career, what if you got feedback where people are like, I don't get the song, man. I don't like it. Like, how did you respond to that?
It ruined my day. It ruined my day. My emotions were so like to an extent, like validated. I had to be validated to an extent, you know, with the creativity. And that was something that, but because I was so consistent with it and putting so much stuff, creating so much all the time, I created more that people liked than that didn't like. So, but I still had to develop a tough skin, because you have to understand that just because someone doesn't like something, it doesn't define you, because that's how it made you. That's how it made me feel. It was like, oh, the fact that you don't like this song means I suck at music. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. It completely defined me, and that's why it would ruin my day. But then I was telling Jeremiah too, like, then I would, like, 24 hours would go by, the emotion would leave, and then I would look at the feedback and be like, yeah, they're right. You know, and it's like, so it's such an emotional response. But all that negative feedback would always make me better every single time. And even to this day, sometimes when you get feedback from like a client and you're like, what are they talking about? Come on, bro, this is fire. Like, and then you get all hot about it, and then it forces you to like push yourself a little bit more to make it a little bit better. And then you look back, you're like, yeah, that was necessary. We needed to. I think
that's actually like a really good one, because it's actually a good indicator for whether you're like on a path that's meaningful to you. Because I think that if negative feedback kind of shut down your entire motivation to do something, that's a signal that you're doing it only for the external reasons. But, you know, like we all have emotions and we want people to like what we do. But if the feedback is like, well, how about this? And after the emotional piece like steadies a bit, you're like, oh, that's cool. Or like, yeah, that would work too. It's probably a good signal that like you're onto something that you deeply care about, because you're finding the excitement for it within you. It's not purely based on whether someone likes the first thing that you did. Did you feel that, like when you were growing up and you were like pursuing the music industry, did you feel like, yep, this is still my calling, this is still my calling? Or was there ever a point where you're like, it's just getting too hard, do I care enough to keep doing this?
Yeah, multiple points I thought that. And I, you know, like for those who know Nipsey Hussle, he was a rapper, an independent artist, and he would always say in his interviews, like, he's like, there was nothing special about what I did. I just never stopped. He was like, I just never quit. He's like, I went through every emotion, every single emotion you could possibly imagine. I went through it 1,000 times. Doubt, you know, I want to quit. I want to stop. I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm great. And back around full circle every single time. And I went through all those emotions as well. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was always doing it on my own. And I think that was one of my downfalls in pursuing this like career as an artist, was even since the beginning, from the beginning, like I was telling you the story when I was young, I took that with me the whole time. It was, I always got to be the one doing everything. I always have to be the one leading the project and doing all aspects of the project and pushing the project forward. And I think that negatively impacted me because it pretty much pushed to the side of me creating a team. Like I never thought from a team perspective. And you'll hear a lot of successful people, especially in music, talk about, hey, do they have a good team? How's the team around them? You know, like who are the supporters around this person that they've brought in, because they know that they can't do everything. And when you're running a business or when you're trying to do a music career, whatever it is, yes, your hustle and passion is going to drive everything forward. But if you try to do everything, you're going to spread yourself thin, and you're going to put forth a half-ass effort as far as the result. And so building that team around you is so important. And it wasn't until I started doing that is when I started seeing the most success. Like, for example, when I had this career in Brazil, you know, it wasn't by myself. You know, it was with another artist, and him and I were partnered together, and we had other people around us that were integral parts and becoming successful in that aspect. So it was, he was doing the majority of the networking and the marketing. I was, you know, producing and writing, and then we would collaborate on the music, and he would be like, yo, I got this guy, bring him in, he's going to shoot the video. And I'm like, cool, that's great. Like, I usually do all that myself, but it's awesome that you're doing it, you know? And it's just like, and then we were able to, since we were working in two kind of different areas, but with the same goal, everything happened really a lot faster.
Well, I think that's a great one. And it like kind of brings us to like J-Pro shifting from like all the entrepreneurial pieces that he was doing, like the window washing business that you had and like building the homes. And then you're a barber, and then you like find the video, and it like starts to get us to this point where you guys find each other. And so like, you know, J-Pro, you're clearly like, whether you were thinking about it in real time or just having to do it, like you're clearly a resilient guy. You're clearly like a creative guy, because you were always finding like, okay, what's the next door I can knock on? And I bet you're probably a pretty curious guy, because like someone like to keep finding these next opportunities, you've got to have like that curiosity to you. And so you find video content, you start to really love it to support your barber business, but then you just realize, oh, maybe it's like the video content itself. So like, first of all, like, do those traits of like resilience and creativity and the curiosity, does that resonate? Like, do you feel that when you look back over your career and how you feel now?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said something like, and I also want to let everyone know too, like the wrong goal will lead you to the right place. Having no goal will lead you nowhere. You know what I mean? So I've done a lot. Like I have a goal, maybe it was the wrong goal, but it led me to this. You know what I mean? And when you're in your early 20s, I'm very like adamant about this. When you're in your early 20s, you need to be doing everything. You should like, you don't even know what you like and what you don't like unless you try everything. And it gets harder, you know, it gets harder in your 30s, you know what I mean? You want to do it while you're fresh, essentially, right? And you do have to become resilient. And one thing that I like to see things through completion, right? It's like I became a barber. I want to get good at barbering. And I heard Alex Hormozy say this, like people who become ultra successful, they become ultra successful not because they like to win, because they hate to lose, right? And no one wants to feel like they made the wrong decision. So when I became a barber, well, for when I fell in love with barbering, like I used to dream about cutting hair. Like when I didn't know I wanted to be a barber, but then when I stepped into barber school, I was like, oh, you mean I could work on my own, you know, my own schedule, make as much money as I want to make. It depends on how much work I want to put in, right? I was like, oh, this is great. You know what I mean? And I fell in love with barber and even content creation. I dream about this, like our business. I have dreams almost every night about this business. And that's why I refuse to let it lose. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
And you have to have resilience. And one thing that really helped with my resilience is the fact that I did jiu-jitsu. When I was doing jiu-jitsu, it was hard, you know, and I did it competitively, right? And when I did MMA, when I did wrestling and all that stuff, like you would literally like, and I grew up in the streets. So, you know what I mean? So I've had some scary moments in the streets, but nothing compared to training where you're like, am I going to go to the hospital tonight? You know what I mean?
Right.
And when you're able to handle that and then think of it like sort of like with a calming of the brain, and you know that you're just fighting to survive, right? That creates that mental resilience that you need to have when you're going through life. And this life is not easy. You're not going to get through it unscathed. So you better develop really young a mental resilience to it.
Yeah, I mean, clearly you have it. And so when you realize like, listen, I've got the dedication, I want to see it through to completion. I love the barber thing, but I'm also falling in love with video content. Like, how did you find that next step? Because once again, this is like a new business that you hadn't done before. And so how did you find it? Did it like overlap with Brandon's kind of realization of like, I want to do something with somebody, not on my own? Like, how did you guys find each other to like get to this next place? Was that you, J Pro, being like you found him online, or were you guys friends? Like, how did it come together?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. Well, for one, it was a difficult decision breaking away from barbering, something that people generally loved me for. Like, I was like a celebrity. Like, people loved introducing me. People loved seeing me. Like, it's and I was really good at it too, and very respected in it. And so to leave that and to go into something else that maybe you're not a master of yet, it was a very difficult decision. And it was a decision that had to be made because you're thinking in the future. Now, how Brandon and I found each other, it was honestly a great story.
It was in a flower field, and I saw him in the distance, and then we ran to each other like and embraced.
I felt like that was going to be the story. That just seemed like it.
So we have a mentor, Armando Leduc, and I found Armando on Facebook, right? And he was telling me about all his wins. He was making all kinds of crazy money that no other videographer was making. These are like really big amounts of money that he was saying that he was making. And I was like, this guy has to be a scam artist. Nobody is making this type of money. But he kept posting it. And then, and then I just started messaging him like, hey man, like, are you really making this money? And if you are, can you teach me how to make this type of money? Because no one else is making this kind of money, right? So then he took a liking to me, started coaching me and mentoring me on my business. And he showed me a lot of things I was overlooking because I was so concerned on the quality of the work. But the quality of the work doesn't matter if no one knows about you, right? Totally, and the quality of the work doesn't matter if you're not charging enough to stay in business, right?
Yeah.
So he started mentoring me, and then he's like, "Oh, I also have my boy Brandon is also in San Diego."
Yeah.
And then so he linked us up together, and then one day Brandon needed help. He was filming a commercial. He's like, "Hey man, you want to help me film this commercial?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, absolutely." And then that was our first time working together.
Yeah.
You know what's I don't know if J Pro, I don't know if people ever told you this, but like your story is like filled with like you reaching out to someone. Like, you notice that? Like
That's true.
And some of it might just be like the circumstance required it too, like when you were talking about like growing up and stuff, but like you've clearly kept that, whether it was a learned skill or something that's just like deeply in you, where like you must, enjoy tapping on that next door, or at least not be afraid of it. And that's actually a skill or a trait that not many people have so easily. But I think what it shows is that if you actually care about something, people feel that. Like, I think in our generation, one skill we've really developed, like from all the streaming platforms, is like you can sniff out BS really quick. But if someone reaches out and you're like, yeah, they really seem like they're interested in this or want to learn, like people will often help you. And you've actually used that skill so many times in your life to like move to that next level, open that next business, get the mentor, make this connection. And so it just really struck me when I was listening to your story that so many of the next unlocks came because you reached out to somebody instead of waiting for something to miraculously find you. I think that's cool, man. And so he reaches out, and then Brandon, you're like, yeah, come and do this thing.
Yeah, well, I kind of want to go back just a little bit because I had a similar moment of letting go as Jeremiah. So like, he was in the barber, he was famous for a barber, like that was his thing, and he kind of had to like let go a little bit in order to pursue this next thing. And for me, that was being a big famous artist. You know, like, I mean, you have to understand, I was in Brazil for multiple months pursuing music out there, producing for artists, going on tour. I was in a tour in Australia. Like, we were doing our thing. We were having a time of our lives, right? And then after COVID, you know, I still took a real big stab at it. I put together the best album that I have. I involved a lot of people. This is when I was really starting to implement the team aspect of things. Shot multiple music videos, created merchandise. Like, it did well, but then I had kids and all this stuff, right? And so it got really tough. And it got to a point after COVID where I was just like, and even some of my really close friends are like, Brandon, like, so what are you gonna do, man? Like, my best friend was like, Brandon, you need to give yourself a cutoff. And I'm just like, damn. He's like, you need to just pick a day. Like, if it doesn't start happening to my standard at this date, you got to figure something else out. And that hurt me real bad, bro. Like, you have to understand, at this point, I'm like 30 years old, 31 years old or something. Yeah. And it hurt me a lot to like let go. And it was my whole life. But I refused to just completely change my industry, right? I was like, I have to find out a way to make money doing what I love, but I have to approach it differently. And that's when everything changed for me, right? So as soon as I said, because I was still primarily doing music, right? As soon as I said, all right, instead of like making music for myself, I'm going to make it for other people, but not just people. I want to make it for businesses. And as soon as I positioned myself as I make music for businesses, I make custom music for businesses, everything changed. People that I've known forever, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I got somebody for you. And I'm just like, what? Like, where was this?
Where you been
last year? Where was this? You know what I'm saying? Like, I could have always done this. Like, but it shifted everyone's perspective, everyone's perception of what I did. And that's how I met Armando, our mutual mentor.
Right.
And so I went to Miami. I was in Miami for like kind of a work vacation combination. And I met somebody who was, excuse me, I need water. I met somebody who was a fan of my music. Like, he was a fan of one of my songs I put out there. He was like, oh, I'm in Miami. And I'm like, bro, I'm coming to Miami. And so we ended up meeting up there. And his cousin who was visiting at the time was Armando, right? And so that's how I met Armando. And then I told Armando about what I did. And then a few weeks later, he's like, yo, Brandon, I need a custom song for my business. And I'm like, cool. And this is very beginning, like very, very beginning what I was doing. And so I ended up doing it for him for free, right? I did it for him for free because I was just getting started. And I understood what he did. And he's like, man, like, you do this for me. Like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to coach you. I'm going to introduce you to people. I'm going to send you referrals. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I got multiple clients from him. And this gesture, this piece of music that I created for him, you know, I put my heart and soul into it, and it came out really, really good. And fast forward to me kind of structuring my business to what it is, similar to what it is today. He's like, yo, you got to link up with Jeremiah. He's in San Diego too. He's doing what you're doing. Boom. And then
that's cool, man.
Segue.
You know what I think is like really strikes me about you is that like you're really open. And I know sometimes you're saying like you needed an unlock to like build the team, but like it strikes me that you're really open to like opportunity.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, you know, you can be like, I mean, going to Brazil, Australia, like real and also like reflective enough. Okay, like maybe we don't always see all the opportunities. We're not always open in real time 24/7. But I feel like you have this trait where there's these pockets where then you start like reflecting on like, okay, what's working, what's not working. Yeah, like, you know, I might be getting this feedback that I don't, you know, love, but like, what does it mean? And I think that that's actually a pretty powerful trait because there's a lot of folks who really struggle with any level of feedback that isn't telling them that what they're doing is great, and they never change, and kind of like to the point of just like bulldozing ahead to something that's not really where they should be going. But for you, I feel like there's these pockets in your career where you've been like, I'm missing something here. And whether it's like building a team, being in a new market, or doing what you're doing, but deploying it in a different way. Like at the end of the day, you're still being creative, creating content, doing something you care about. You're passionate. It's within your purpose. You've built a team. You're working with people you care about and helping people. Okay, the deployment is instead of like being in Brazil, making the music yourself, you're like making music for businesses. But, you know, from what I know about you is that like you get a ton of passion and purpose from just deploying your skills in this way. Like, when you hear that back, does that like sound like you, or are you like still coming to the realizations?
No. You're right. At the end of the day, I'm still creating, and that's what I want to do. I want to create stuff. I want to be able to say, look what I made. I want to be
just
able
like
to
for your grandma, like just like those
exactly.
VHSs that you sent out, right?
Exactly.
Like
Same thing. I want to be able to create something out of nothing. I want to take a pure idea and manifest it into a physical reality, and that's what brings me the most joy. As far as
because that was her story too. Like you've been doing that since you were a kid, right? Like that was your grandma's story, and you wanted like her brand or her story to be captured, so that like, and then you sent it out. You distributed it as a kid, and you sent out these VHSs, right? It's like you were. It's funny, and this is why I love this topic, because when we like think through our life journey and then we look back, you can actually like see the pieces that like always stayed with you. And so you've got the resilience, you've got the curiosity, and now you've got the creativity, and you've got like the willingness to like change the model. You guys are bringing this all together.
Yeah.
And so like, give me the, like, J-Pro, what was it like for you to like step into this space where Brandon had like, maybe had been in it for longer or in a different way, and you were kind of coming to it? What was it like to partner up with somebody, a few years ago in this way? What was that experience for you?
Well, so this is what really happened, right? So him and I were, we started calling each other sparingly. Hey, man, like, I want to do it like this way. He's like, yeah, I want to do it this way too. We're like, man, we got to start this podcasting. And Brandon hit me up. Was like, hey, man, we had to shoot a couple of different scenes for that commercial I helped him with. There was a couple of scenes we had to reshoot, right? And I was like, yeah, man, absolutely, let's do it. And he's like, hey, my friend, we have this office available for us. That thing we've been talking about, let's podcast together, create clips from it, and help promote our stuff, right?
Yeah, because at this stage, we're like, let's help each other do what we're doing for ourselves, but the biggest thing was creating content.
Yes.
So I was like, hey, I got this spot. It's this office. Let's go shoot some content together.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we go and Brandon's like goal oriented. We're here. We're gonna shoot all this content. We're gonna shoot right here, and we go and we're talking to the sales manager here, and he's telling us, and I'm like fascinated by this space, and I was like, oh, this is cool, man. He's like, yeah, we got this space over here and over there, and I was like, let's go look at it. And Brandon's like, oh, all right, let's go. Because Brandon's like, just like,
I'm like, we came to do what we came to do.
We came to work, you know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, so we looked at this space, we looked at another space, and we got the office we're in today. I saw it and I was like, dude, this office is sick. And then we shot our podcast in it. And
that's your curiosity coming out there again.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was asking the sales manager, like, hey, so how much is it a month? It was like affordable, like, hey, because keep in mind, I live in San Diego. San Diego is the most unaffordable city in America.
As of today, it officially is.
And so you're talking about, like, I've been looking for spaces where I really want to have an office and do all this, and we're talking about like astronomical rent prices, right? And I have some successful friends that have offices and space that they don't use, and I was trying to utilize my connections, and it just wasn't working out. They weren't really like, hey, can we go look at the space? Can I do this with the space? And they were just kind of like, successful people are busy, so it's starting to become a hassle. Then we found this space. We're like, hey, we don't even need to use our network anymore. We could just get the space on our own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's like, you down? He's like, you down? And I was like, yeah, I'm down. And then we just started talking about it. We actually got into the space to work on our separate businesses. Right. We weren't partners at this point. But then we realized, like, his strategy and my strategy were the same strategy, the same clients,
same niche.
The same niche. And I told Brandon, I was like, hey, man, you realize we're competitors in the same office, right? We're going to be calling the same people, offering the same, we're doing everything the same. I'm like, instead of us becoming competitors, how about we become partners?
I was like, all right.
Cool, and to be honest, Brandon, hey, look, Brandon actually wasn't really like, he was like,
I pushed back a little bit.
He pushed back.
Yeah.
The vision was clear to me, but like, he pushed back a little bit, and then eventually he was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, how did it feel for you?
Well, the reason I pushed back was because I had just spent the last year putting in so much work into the company that I was doing at the time. And I'm like hours and hours and hours of like developing the sites, developing branding, paying for coaching,
Right.
you know, creating a brand. I was getting clients. I had a lot of people that knew who I was and what we were doing and creating. There was a lot of buzz around it. I was building, but I was struggling because I was doing everything, you know, and I wasn't getting a lot of support in what I was doing. And so it's the same thing, literally the same thing. When I create something and someone doesn't give me the best feedback, it bothers me, right? And I had just spent a year creating something, right? And then now I'm presented with this opportunity, but it's also, hey, you're going to put that to the side now. We're going to create this new thing, right? And in my mind, what I knew I needed was Jeremiah, right? I knew I needed him as a partner. What I didn't want to do was change everything.
Right. What was it? I'm curious. Like,
what's that?
But I'm curious. Like you said, you knew you needed Jeremiah. Like beyond the help, because like you could find help on Fiverr. What was it that you knew about him that was like the right match for you?
I knew I needed another person who was equally, if not more, motivated and driven to accomplish a goal, right? And so when you hire people, they're not going to be even close to being as driven as you are or care at all. Really, they're just hired to do a job or whatever it is. But that's not what I needed in this moment, because this was still the hustle, the grind moment of the business. It was the pushing, the every day, the grinding through the shit that you don't want to do every day. And I was the only one that had that in my current situation, right? And then when I met him, I realized that he had this exact same drive. We spoke the same language. We talked about the same things. We followed the same people. We were aware about the same techniques and coaching and all the different efforts in every aspect. And so I was like, because I would always say, like, man, if I just need somebody else that's like me. I need somebody else that's like me in order to really push the needle forward. And so I knew that was him. I just didn't want to change everything. I didn't want to have to do another website and do another thing and do another thing and do another thing.
It's incredible, man. It's incredible that you found each other and like all the connection points along the way with your mentor and the different paths that you took to get to like such a similar place where you joined each other. And so how did you guys decide? So, you know, you could create content for a variety of industries. And I know that attorneys, law firms, like this is something that you guys think about a lot. And it's going to be a lot of the folks that listen to this too. And so how did that piece come into it? Like, were you guys both already focused on that because you saw a gap in the market, or were you just doing like B2B kind of content creation and eventually niche down into it?
Well, we always say that attorneys found us because just coincidentally, attorneys were both of our biggest clients at the time. Oh. And so it's like he had attorney clients that he had been working on for a long time. I had a few attorney clients. And because of the coaching that I was in at the time, their biggest thing was about niching down. And also our mentor was into attorneys as well. And I was like a big thing for him. So it just kind of all pointed in that direction. So we were like, let's just do it. Let's just focus on that. You got attorney clients. I got attorney clients. They pay me the most money. They pay you the most money. They got money.
and a lot of them don't do like this type of like content creation. Like it's still like it's a big industry and a mature industry in a lot of ways, but like very young in this way around like content creation. And so when you guys are working with attorneys and law firms, like how are you relating to them? Because you come from such different backgrounds than the attorneys do, and skills and natures and personas. Like how are you relating to them to get their minds over the hurdle of like creating video content, like creating, you know, this like really progressive brand, you know, like how do you cross that gap with attorneys who are just not used to it?
You know what, Chad, that's a great question. And it wasn't difficult at all. I haven't had an issue with it. It just, when we sit down with attorneys, they're into it, you know, and there's this like idea that attorneys are stuffy and in a certain type of way. But what I found is attorneys are very relatable. They're very cool. They're very down to earth. So that has not been an issue at all. That changes though when you start talking to the big firms. When you start talking to the big firms, that sort of like you do get with those type of guys. But with the like the medium-sized firms, like those guys, they're down to earth. They're really cool people. They're the type of guys you can have a beer with after work. Like attorneys are actually like really cool. I don't know where this stereotype of them being stuffy and whatnot came from.
You know, I think you're right that like on an individual basis, like everyone's just human. And like they've got their own stories and how they got through it and the things they struggle with. And so very human. I think maybe, coming from, spending so much time in that industry, there's like a bit of like arms wrapped around like how you're supposed to be once you're inside of it, which is like a little bit less individual, a little bit more part of a machine, especially as the firm gets bigger, like you said. And so I think to the world that doesn't work with attorneys regularly, you guys do, but I think to a lot of people, that's where they get the stereotype from, because they see these attorneys and they kind of all like look and sound the same, but like they're all individuals and different when you're inside the machine. And so, for Brandon, like, how are you, like, what's your strategy with these attorneys to like help them get their personal brand out there? Like, how are you tapping into the creativity that you have to help them like share their message?
Right. So first thing I just want to say that the relatability aspect between us and them, I think we realize that it takes a certain type of person to be able to work that hard for that long. With attorneys, it's law school, right? Like they got to go through law school, which is a lot of hard work for years, right? And then there's those that go to a firm, and then there's those that start a business, and maybe a combination of both. But we mostly speak to attorneys that own their own firm, right? And so it's a certain type of individual to be able to go through that and then take this leap of faith to start their own firm. They're all on their own. They're working out of their living room. They're trying to find clients. That's a hustle. That's a grind. That makes you a down-to-earth person, and it humbles you. And I think because when we speak to these attorneys, we're speaking them from a similar place. That's why they level with us and they become relatable, because we know that they've been through the grind. They've been through the hustle, and they came out on top, and they realize that we're there too. And so that's how we're able to relate to them. But then we're also coming from like we're not lawyers, so you don't have to talk to us like that, type of perspective. And that's why we're able to pull out what we're able to pull out, especially on our podcast. But when it comes to like creating the content, it's specifically to that. We're able to see them from a perspective that most people aren't able to see them by. We don't see them as the stuffy people. We see them from point A to point B, like from the grind, from the law school, because we're learning about all of this from when we talk to them, when we have them on our podcast, we learn their whole story. And so we get to see their true personality. We get to see what they've been through. We get to understand their struggles, and we get to understand their potential, because we're able to see them from a perspective that they may not even be looking at themselves. And a lot of these
they must love that sometimes. Like you must get a lot of which you probably love, because like you respond really well to like that feedback of like seeing the passion and creating the story. And so many of them must be like, oh man, like, thank you for like seeing that in me. And I haven't, because I find, like going through law school and working in the firms myself, you kind of get sucked into a certain mentality for a long time, and you almost forget your individuality. And then here you guys come along being like, I see you, like we've been through the journey, like we know what it takes to like put in the hustle and build the clients and build a brand. And it must be really refreshing for them when like to be able to have that conversation with you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You must love that.
And also like we make you look cool too. You know what I mean? When we're creating content, we're making you look like a badass, You're not only are you educating, you look cool. Like we're making you look good on video, and the videos are working. And because we come at it from our perspectives, we're able to get you, because when attorneys try to create content on their own, it's always like, this is so-and-so from this law firm, and we help these type of people, and they start getting all legal, and I have to go in and be like, yo, Chad, no one knows what you just said. They didn't even watch your video. They clicked away. Like, let's say it in this way. You know what I mean? And then you get to say it in a way that's more fun. It's a little bit more like that the people want to listen to you. Now that people want to listen to what you have to say, because you're saying it in a more relatable way. And then it takes a lot of pressure off of you, because now you realize, hey, we're not in front of a judge right now.
I don't got to be that guy now.
You don't got to be that guy right now.
Well, it's funny. It's really smart, because what a lot of people say about lawyers about their own branding is it sounds like they're talking to other lawyers, not to their prospects. And that's what you guys are so great at, because like whether it's through your business or personally, like you could be the buyer. And so you're giving them like the perspective of the buyer, instead of what a lot of lawyers get trapped in, whether they're making any sort of content, is they almost are singularly thinking about how would lawyers absorb this. But for most of them, like lawyers aren't their clients. It's businesses that are their clients.
Well, let me push back.
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah, let me push back right there. It's a misconception. So, and that's also what makes us different, right? This is why it's important to work with somebody who works specifically within your niche. So, we are also trying to attract other attorneys because
like for
other
referrals
attorneys
and stuff.
referrals, but also a lot of our clients are so busy, they really can't take on any more cases. So what do they need? They need other qualified talent to come work for them. So you want to create this social media where other attorneys are watching you, maybe paralegals, maybe attorneys that are about to be attorneys or are still in law school. They're consuming your content. You're cool because you're creating content. So you got that clout. And now when you're like, hey, I'm hiring this position, they're getting the cream of the crop applying because
cool.
they're known about.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. That's awesome, guys. I mean, it's a really beautiful thing that you're allowing these folks to like share their message and like bring out the humanity in it. And the thing that I always tell lawyers and law firms that when you do any of these things, you can, just like you're saying about getting the top talent, is like you can immediately jump to the front because you're working with a lot of clients, but there's so many more folks that aren't doing this yet. And so as soon as you engage a little bit with like creating a brand, and especially if you're doing it through video, you can immediately jump to the front and create the awareness that you guys do for your clients. And so I think that's really special. And so what are you guys thinking about what's next? You know, when you think about like all these gifts that you guys have, the journey that you've had, you've pivoted it a little bit yourselves personally, now you're together, like in your minds, where do you think this is going over the next few years as you're creating this brand awareness, especially for the legal industry?
So we want to be the number one attorney content creators in the country. And from that, we're also working on the side. It's still, we haven't announced it yet, but we're working on lead generation for attorneys,
Right.
As a separate thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we're literally going through school right now, right? So like every time that we have an attorney on our podcast, not only are we learning about them, but we're learning more and more and more about their specific niche in law, right? We're learning about employment law. We're learning about personal injury. We're learning about criminal defense. We're learning about immigration. We're learning about all the different aspects of it. Our education is like through the charts right now. We go to class like 5 days a week with these podcasts. And so it's allowing us to just be so in tune with the industry from both sides of the fence, right? From the attorney side, and then from the client side, and then also from the lead generation side. And so we're able to see every aspect of it, which is going to put us in a really great position to be able to know how to market and also to lead generate for attorneys. And we want to come at it from this perspective, and then giving our creative backgrounds, adding that into it. Because there's a lot of lead gen companies out there, just like a guy behind a microphone. Attorneys, you want 10,000 leads every single day? Well, we're going to send it to you or your money back. And it's like, you know, we know a lot of law firms that have worked with companies like that, and they just don't deliver. It's all hype. It's all,
of course,
you know, they overpromise and underdeliver. And we want to come in from a perspective of high quality marketing that's brand specific and is going to bring true cases for people who actually need help. It's not just every single click that comes through where, you know, they're getting tossed crap their way. And so I think for this education that we're, you know, getting right now is going to really help with that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And, you know, you're going to change a lot of attorneys' lives who otherwise would, you know, kind of, Brandon, like you were saying through your journey, like trying to do it all themselves. And, you know, we're a 9 out of 10 on certain things, but we're a 4 out of 10 on other things. And if we're spending like tons of time on 4s out of 10s, like you might get it to a 5, but you're never going to make that thing a 9 most likely. And so the goal I always feel like is like, okay, what are your 9s? Focus as much of your time and energy as you can there. And then if you've got 4s, it's like, how do you mitigate it or get support on it? Because you're going to spend so much energy and it's never going to be that great. And so when I think about a lot of attorneys, what you're doing for them is you're taking like this 4 out of 10, whether it's lead gen, brand building, that is just, it wasn't taught in law school. And so a lot of attorneys don't have that naturally. And you're taking that off their plate and making it a much more fun experience. And so I think it's incredible. I would love it to hear, like, thinking back, like we've just covered so much of your life and career journey. Like when you're thinking back to like little Brandon and like little J Pro, or like, you know, someone who like you guys would be like mentors to now, just like you guys had the mentor. Yeah, like little babies. What would you say to those guys, or to someone else who's listening now who's thinking like, whoa, they had a mentor, those guys sound like they could be my mentor? Like, what would you say to them in terms of like how to figure out what you're great at and to keep testing it and pursuing it? Like, what do you think on this look back of your whole journey?
Little Jeremiah wouldn't listen, so I wouldn't waste my breath.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I would say I would actually help them out a little bit. You know, like I feel like a lot of people would have that answer, and or that question, and they would be like, I would just tell them to keep going, never stop. But what I would say to little old me would be like, hey man, look around you. I would say seek out people who are doing what you want to do. I would say do that earlier, as quickly as you can. You need to get around other people who are doing what you love at the moment, and you think that's what you want to do. Go find other people that are doing it, that are really good at it, and learn from them. Don't just try to learn everything all the time by yourself and create by yourself. Get around others. That's going to help you get to where you want to be faster.
Yeah, I would tell myself to go get around people who are successful and apprentice under them as early as possible.
Yeah.
So get around people who are already successful, be interested in them, be willing to help them. Don't ask for no payment, do it for free, and just offer as much help as you can as early as possible. If you could do it in high school, start doing it in high school. Don't wait to graduate and then realize that you're broke. You know what I mean? Like if you can start doing it at like 14, 15, 16 and really start bumping your head early, then that time of discovery and that time of realizing how to make money and that time of building your network, you can really expedite that process.
Yeah, both those messages like resonate so deeply. Like I say to a lot of people when they think about building a brand, like on LinkedIn, a lot of attorneys on there, I always tell them like, give what you have first. Like, don't hoard it and like think that, oh, well, if I tell someone some 101 level tip about my area of law, then like my competitor is going to steal that. Like I've been on the buy side of legal services for a long time too. And it's like internal legal, like they already know how to find 101. What they need is like 102, 103. They need that more, you know, that greater expertise. And so share 101 first. And that way, like you're lifting others. And as soon as you lift others first, to your point, J Pro, like you build awareness and credibility and trust because people know like, oh, this guy's giving first. And that's a little bit, you know, unfortunately rarer than we would like. I think a lot of people think in a scarcity model where they've got to hold it together because they think if I tell anyone anything first, you know, they think, oh, some competition is going to take it from me. I really don't believe in that. I believe in like give first and you build a community around you. And I think, Brandon, that speaks to, you know, what you would tell little Brandon, which is like build a community, get around people, because you would be amazed at like the value that you take from being around like complementary minded people, because you can like vibe off each other. You can take learnings off of each other, and you're like, your growth is like exponentially faster than trying to build it yourself. And you're giving to them just like they're giving to you. So I think both those tips they're incredible. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for sharing your time, sharing your journey. And like, I know that if I was listening to this and I was still had like my own shop or I was on the sell side of services, I'd want to look cool. I'd want my message to be fun. And you guys, you know, you're such warm people that I know that that's where it comes from. And that's what makes it so successful. So thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Of course. And for everyone that was listening to this and watching this, like, I hope that you go back and think about, you know, some of the tips that they shared in terms of like building the community and tapping on that next door and making that ask and giving first and doing things for others. Because yeah, I mean, you guys have an amazing, you know, media company now, but it took all of that testing, all of that work, all of that giving to build it. And so, you know, tag us, let us know like questions, tips, any information you want to know from these guys, because, you know, I know that they're here to serve just like they shared in this podcast. So
absolutely.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. Hit us up. You know, let's talk. Thanks so much, Chad. That was fun, man. You did a great job. We appreciate it.
No, of course. A pleasure, guys. Okay. Everyone have an incredible day, and we'll see you on the next one.